Hi, welcome back to Image by Liz. It's Liz Zilka, Friday, February 5th, and today we have a guest. We have the lovely Paul Riedner, who's joining me.
Did you just say lovely?
I did just say lovely. The handsome Paul Riedner, who is with the Veterans Resilience Project, and we're going to talk a little bit about what he is about and how we met and how we started kind of walking down the road together with my gifts and talents helping his process. Let me tell you a little bit about Paul. Paul was a bright young lad who went to Carleton College in Minnesota and studied and then decided to join the Army, of all things, and then came back and decided to get a master's at the Carleton School of Business and found out that there was really a great power in the written word when he was given a class assignment and wrote a letter, and they published it in our local newspaper. And he understood that there was the ability to do some change through that. And so from there, he kind of wandered down the road until he decided that he could help his fellow veterans. Am I giving you a good description, a good introduction, Mr. Paul?
I think so.
Yeah?
But I didn't wander.
Okay.
But then they say not all who wander are lost.
Yeah, I don't mean that you were lost. But
after business school, I went straight to the Institute of Production and Recording to start learning audio and video production.
Okay.
So it's just sort of developing that, my artistic abilities to produce stories, pretty much, and be an advocate for other people. So.
Okay, I like that because you are an advocate. So Paul and I were introduced by another mutual friend of ours, and she just decided that the two of us, she decided that the two of us might have some things that would be interesting for us to kind of look at and see if we meshed in any way. And as we sat and had coffee, we decided that there were quite a few things that we had quite a few interests in common. And one of them was the Veterans Resilience Project that he was stepping into. Mm-hmm. Give everybody a little background on what that is, and then I think we'd like to talk about why you trusted me to help you with your image on that.
Yeah, sure. So the Veteran Resilience Project is just a brand new 501c3 in town. And we have a network of trauma therapists set up in 15 different locations around the state, and it's growing all the time. And then we offer Minnesota veterans who are suffering from the after effects of war. We help them to get free EMDR trauma therapy through our network.
And what's EMDR?
So it's a trauma therapy. That stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Okay. And it's really powerful, and it's not being offered at the VA, even though it's the most effective treatment modality, and they're supposed to be offering it, but they've just decided to focus on two of the other recommended treatments. So our founder, Elaine Wynn, set up this network, and she's an EMDR therapist herself. So she did a pilot study, and we have all the data from that says that this stuff really works, and they recruited me to be on the board, and then I sort of started to learn about all of this stuff, and I picked it up pretty quick because it's personal to me, and once I figured out that there was something that actually works and it's not being offered, and I saw some of the kind of scandalous things that are happening in the background in the bureaucracy of federal government, and just in the business environment, and then in the community here, that we sort of pretend like it's not our responsibility to help people that we send off to war. I was like, okay, I'm ready to do something. So they hired me as their executive director, and now we're moving forward with a podcast called Resilience MN that's on the Alive and Social Network, which is a local podcast company that has like 31 shows, and the founder is Sean Bernard, who's been in radio for 20 years. He's Tom Bernard's nephew, the legendary Tom Bernard of the KQRS morning show. So his father was a Vietnam vet.
Really?
Sean's father. So, and he likes what we're doing. He likes the way we're doing it. So they're our first partner, and they're going to help us find show sponsors and get the word out to the veteran community about what we're doing. And so if someone wants to check out our site, it's resiliencemn.org.
Okay.
And the podcast is on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, and it's on our website. So you just have to look for Resilience and then MN, as in, the state's abbreviation. So yeah, so that's what we're doing. And the reason why your help was so crucial for me and for us is that even though I went to business school and I played the part for 2 years while I was there, I fell off the wagon a few times, but I was not that comfortable in what I thought was expected business attire, because I represent myself sort of with reminders of my military service. So like my hat, and I wear my VRP shirt, and I wear combat boots, and so I keep these like reminders of where I've been and what's important, and I wanted to be able to authentically go and have meetings with executives and legislators that we met with last week, and want to do that with confidence, and understand how much latitude I have to adjust that expectation,
Let me explain to the viewers a little bit more. Basically, what we did was I went over to Paul's house, and I step into people's closets, which is what I consider really intimate space, because I'm stepping into your bedroom, into your closet. So it's not just getting into your bedroom, but it's into a closet, which is where people usually have their dirty clothes. They usually it's such a private space that people have a hard time letting anybody in there. So even Paul was telling me that he said he doesn't normally get nervous, but he was nervous at the idea of having me step into his closet.
Well, the idea wasn't nervous. I didn't really bristle at that. But once we were there, then I was sort of like, oh, this is kind of strange.
And it is, because I'm in there and I'm looking through and I'm digging through, and I find things, and then I make you try things on. And sometimes they're things that have been hanging in your closet that you haven't looked at for 3 years.
Yeah.
But there's something in it that resonates with you and this article of clothing. And then when you put it on, you're like, oh, I kind of like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like the suit that you had.
Yeah.
That
I haven't worn in years.
Yes. And you put it on, it was like, it just fit. It hung beautifully, and it just looked really good. And you're like, oh, I remember that I like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go back to the necklace that you're wearing. There's something really intriguing about this, because this is new. I don't remember you having this on last time I saw you. Tell me a little bit about this necklace, because there's a real strength to how it lays and how it presents itself, and it fits your image really nice. But tell me a little bit about it.
So this was a gift. It was given to me in Joshua Tree, California, by a friend that I had just met. We were there for a training with Dr. Greer, a week-long retreat, and he's a musician and kind of a healer. He uses music to heal in the sort of Aboriginal sense, like in circle, nice, with drums, and with he plays like all these ancient instruments that are just sort of, they had that ceremonial feel to it. Mm-hmm. So he brought this as a gift and didn't know who he was going to give it to, and he said it matched me. And so what this is it's a chisel that's called a TOK, T-O-K, and it stands for determination. Mm. And so since then I wear it. I've been wearing it occasionally, but I don't know, probably in the last 6 to 9 months I've been wearing it every day. I just often wear it underneath, but I like the I just like this natural like rope, and then the stone, like it really is a good fit for me and the colors that I wear, and it's also a reminder of, you know, every day you make progress by doing something, you know, stepping forward every single day, and all these small, you know, seemingly small actions that we take, they add up, you know. That's what a chisel is, you know. So
Oh, that's interesting. And it's yes, and determination does really represent you. And that's an interesting element. I hadn't even thought about that, because we kind of worked that into your style too. Paul was really interesting because he had to match, like, boardrooms. He had to match legislators. He had to match all these people, and he has a very casual style about him. Color palette, very, very neutral. Style, very casual, as you can see, very comfortable, very, you know, very easy to meet, very easy to talk with. But when you're asking people to do, basically, you're asking them to move mountains for you, because you're asking them to give you money, you're asking them for legislation, you're asking them to do things that you really need them to do, then suddenly you have to step into their sphere of influence and their sphere of dress. And that's where, I think, if I can speak for you, I think that's where the trepidation was. It was like you didn't want to have to do a suit and tie.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we excavated this really super comfortable tone-on-tone look, where you look like you have a suit and tie on, but to you, when you look in the mirror, you don't feel like you have a suit and tie on, because you've got jeans and you got your military boots on. So from the waist down, you're cash. And then from the waist up, you're dressed so that when you're sitting at a table, no one knows.
Right. Yeah, and it's like that, taking different colors and textures and putting them together in ways that you might not think is actually, you know, that should be frowned upon, right? Because, like, someone told me before, like, well, you can either wear brown or you can wear black. But, right, like, when Liz brought me through the process, she's like, well, what was your favorite color? You know, and it was blue before the military, and then it went to black. And then since the military, it's gone from gray to like a brown. And I'm like, oh man, I gotta now get rid of, not wear any of the black stuff that I've accumulated and start wearing brown. But she's like, no, you can use them together. And so now when I put browns and blacks together, it looks pretty cool. Like, now I can wear it confident and be like, yeah, this is me. You know, who's to say it's not like something that I think it looks cool, you know. And then just putting on like a jacket on top of, you know, black on black tie and shirt, like it has that little bit of muscle to it, right? The jacket looks nice, but there's a little bit of sort of darkness underneath that feels cool to me, feels authentic.
Well, and there is a shadow to what you're doing, because we're sending all these people off to, quote unquote, represent the U.S. and to protect our freedoms, and then they come back here and we're not taking care of them.
Yeah.
And that's a real shadow to the underbelly of the United States, and you're just shining a little light on it. You and some other groups that are trying to, you know, take care of the veterans, and you know, I just think if we're going to ask somebody to do something, I think we should take care of them when they come back. I think it's really, really important that we take care of the veterans.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get on to the discussion of whether it's war or peace, but it's like, just take care of the people who went and did what they signed up to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're all around us, you know. It's like it's easy to talk about a veteran population like they're somewhere else, you know, but they're right here. They're probably next door. You know, they're sometimes hidden, just like we were talking about.
And they're sometimes pretending like they're happy when there's such a sadness and such almost turmoil and chaos going on, and they present what I consider what a lot of people do with their image. There's all this going on the inside, and then they present this beautiful package on the outside, and nobody knows. Whereas if you can just crack it open and present the real image, then the world starts to function on a different level. That's why when Paul came to me and asked me if I would be willing, this was really intriguing to me, was to take these people and work with color and clothing and we haven't started yet, but working with color and clothing and seeing how we can get them along with what you guys are doing with the whole what is it? Electronic, it's
EMDR.
EMDR, ignore that. EMDR. So along with the EMDR, I am really interested in interjecting color and things along with it, because I think that once we get them in a space where their brains are calm, then the color will just give them a different outlook and path on their life. They'll know who they are.
And from my perspective, I think, it's interesting, the color part of it. I think for me, the most valuable thing that I learned was that that now I don't have to stress out about stuff like that, And I didn't even need to go buy anything. I had all this stuff in my closet, right? And I just have to put it together differently. But now I don't have to even think about it. I'm like, I put these things together and I go out and I'm not being a fraud at all. I'm not, it's like, I don't have to feel like I'm in someone else's, game.
And here's what's really interesting about that. There's this new thing on the internet that everyone's talking about it, where you take all your clothes and you put your hangers backwards in the closet, and then whatever you wear, you put back the original, the right way. And so then if you haven't worn anything for 6 months, then you get rid of it. What's really interesting about that concept is, if we did that, Paul wouldn't have a lot of the stuff that he's wearing right now, because some of the stuff you hadn't worn for years.
Yeah.
And so going by that, so I tell people, it's not about how long you've worn it. It's about whether or not you know why you bought it, how it works, and how to repurpose it into your wardrobe. If you can't fill all of those elements, then it can go in the go away pile. But
yeah, and I think the value in what you offer is huge, because to have an objective second set of eyes who understands all these things, is huge, as opposed to I could go in there and be like, yeah, I'm gonna figure out how to how to change my style, and I'm telling you, that's going nowhere. I'll try. I'd probably try some of those dress shirts on, and then I'd be stuck with this idea that I have to wear khakis with that dress shirt, and pretty soon I'm feeling like shit and going, no, I'm not, this is not happening, and I'll go right back to where I was.
Well, exactly, and my goal is not to make you dependent on me. My goal is that once you excavate your image and your style, you should be a standalone. You should only be checking in with me, or I should be checking in with you once or twice a year, just to make sure that that everything's functioning. But I shouldn't be a phone call like, oh my gosh, I've got a wedding, what do I wear? Oh my gosh, I've got a job interview, what do I wear? All those answers should be in your closet, and you should understand how you want to present yourself.
Yeah.
And if you have those questions, then your image has not been excavated. You don't really know who you are. You know who you've been told, and that's who you know who you've been told you are, and that's who you're presenting to the world. And that's just my philosophy.
Yeah, it's not you don't offer some solution that needs to be changed all the time. It's a way of thinking about how do you present yourself that's honest and authentic. It's really it's a mindset. I think it's powerful.
I think it is. And that's why I laugh with people. I like to meet them first for a cup of coffee, because you need to know if you want me even in your closet.
Sure.
Do you like me enough? Do you feel comfortable enough with me to bring me into that intimate space?
Yeah.
Paul and I knew each other for, I don't know, 6-9 months, even before I even got, before you got the Veterans Resilience Project, and then we moved forward, and,
And still I was a little nervous, in that environment, where I wanted to start controlling the process a little bit, over-explaining myself. Well, this is why I like this is why I don't like this. I know I should probably do this, but I don't want to do that. And and I'm like, wait a second. This is what Liz does. I don't need to honestly. And then once I decided to finally, give up control to you, to just look at what clothes I had, and just trust your process. And it was it's fun. I didn't have to be, worried about it, and
I like
it's
that.
true.
It was fun. Well, And it should be fun, because it's really about you rediscovering who you are, so that when you walk out the door, you don't have to worry. If you're going to work, you're going to work. If you're with the family, you're with the family. If you're on vacation, you always know who you are, and you never have to worry about that. And I think that's important.
No, it's huge. I mean, if you like, I imagine just in this community in Minneapolis, St. Paul, like all the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies here, and like I could be really harsh on like the corporate sort of culture, right? And say that, you know, people in those organizations need to sort of stand up for what they know is right in their home life, right? Not to leave their home like values and principles at home when they go into their work environment, their career. Like that's cognitive dissonance. Like when you have an action, a behavior that is, that you're doing that doesn't jive with your inner values or what you believe. And I think that if you start to understand where that line is, where I can go into my job and sort of tweak how I'm presenting myself, then I have the confidence to stand up and say what I really think, and do it with not putting everything on the line. It's just being a little bit more in touch with, that there are some things we need to stand up for and call out in our careers, so that, our communities are healthy, and we're not just
absolutely
throttling every single source of health and well-being in our community for the sake of, profit. And so I think that you add up this one case study with me, with this process, and you do that, on a larger scale with more and more people, it makes a difference.
I think so, because I think it's a process of honoring, and it starts with honoring yourself, and then you start to honor what you stand for, then you start to honor the people around you, then you start to honor the companies around you, then you start to honor the state you live in, then you start to honor the country you live in, and then pretty soon you're hand in hand with everybody honoring the world. And, I know I've been called Pollyanna, but I really believe that if everybody stands up and they represent who they need to represent, which is themselves, you're the only you we have. You're the only Paul we have. I'm the only Liz, and if we don't show up, that thread is gone. There's nobody that's going to replace it, and if you're trying to represent somebody else's thread, then you diminish what that thread really is supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so, I'm kind of the anti-Wall Street, Madison Avenue, anti-tell people how to be somebody else. It's like, no, you just have to be you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest job. I really do. I think it's really hard to step out and be you, and because you have to really like you.
And you have to learn how to like yourself,
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that takes time and internal work, facing your fears or being honest about your shortcomings or whatever. If it was easy, we would have already done it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I think like you have a lovely young family. You've got, 2 kids and one on the way. And so I think looking through their eyes, they don't have those same issues. They really know who they are. It's like, and I wish that I had that ability, but it's like, it's fun to watch the world through their eyes. And maybe that's the blessing. Maybe that makes it easier.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everything on their level is just so honest.
I know.
And nothing's hidden. It's great.
No, and they just say things. It's like, and you just look and you go, wow, why do you think that? And they just tell you. Whereas when somebody asks me, why do I think that, I immediately take 5 steps back in my head and I think, okay, how can I express this so that I don't upset anybody, so that do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not right. I mean, it's politically correct, but it's really not right. Oh, yes. But anyway, so back to the resilience project.
Uh-huh.
So how do you think your image that we excavate now fits into this and then fits you into underneath there? So you're individual, but you're still doing the umbrella.
Yeah.
So how do you think we did on that process into their whole project? Because it's kind of really important to always find out what the image.
Well, it feels great. My job some of the time is to interface with executives and community leaders. But on the other end of the spectrum, I'm producing a podcast, and I'm going and sitting down with veterans and telling stories and asking questions and listening. And so the range of sort of my everyday attire is, it's a wide spectrum. But I don't have to like completely revamp it. I know that I can put a jacket on right now. I can put my brown jacket on right now and walk in to that. Also makes sense, So the board, they quickly figured out that I'm, with me, it's like it's gonna make sense, And then I take the jacket off, and I go sit down at the VFW with the dude and have a beer, and
That's honest.
Yeah, and so before I'd be in there with a hoodie and my hat and my boots, it's just sort of off of what, I think it probably had a little bit of seed of doubt in their minds of like, okay, this guy's really building this organization quickly, and he's getting things done, and we like the direction that he's moving. But I wonder if it's like, but what happens when we get into that business setting? How is this going to be handled? But that's the time after we did this process, and then I started to have my jacket on, and I had a tie ready to go, and it sort of put people at ease. They saw it was like, man, this guy stepped up. And
I always think the hoodie to me always represents it. It's more like I'm invisible. So I think the doubt comes from, is he willing to step up, or does he want to stand in the shadows? And for you to be the CEO or where they wanted you, you needed to be able to step out of the shadow into the job that they wanted you to do.
Yeah.
And the hoodie represented not that you weren't qualified,
right? But
you're right. They weren't sure that you were going to step up when they needed you to step up.
Yep.
That's interesting.
I'm wearing a hoodie.
Yes.
But no one can see you.
Yeah, I'm the guy in the shadow.
Shadow man.
And then the other part that I was gonna just add was that it's funny, like honoring yourself and your story is a lot of fun, because so I designed this shirt, right, and this font, for example, right, it actually harkens back to the the military sort of spray on, I can't remember what they call it. It's not calligraphy.
Oh, graffiti?
No. That's sort of like, it's like a stencil that you would,
Oh, that you put like on Jeeps and stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of military gear has that on, and we use it all the time.
Okay.
So this is actually of a style like a stenciled military font.
I like
but
it.
It has like a modern, lean and sort of a modern style to it.
It has a strength. There's a real strength
right.
to it. Yeah.
It's sort of represents action and forward looking,
Mm-hmm.
but it still is something that is recognizable as sort of a take on the stencil. And with the podcast and all the decisions that I kind of have to make, because I'm the only one in this project that's doing all this work, so I have to be able to make decisions quickly, and with conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard if I was going to have no compass, right, to how everything fits together, this font, this color, who I am.
Oh, that's
right?
interesting.
So I kept my wayfinder, my compass. Everything points to the same thing, just honoring my experience. I'm a post 9/11 vet,
Mm-hmm.
So I could build things to be recognizable to a Vietnam veteran, but that's not my experience, right? And it's not to diminish their experience, because I'm going to tell their story too. But when I go through all of my the business day, right, and the things that I create and the style and all those decisions, I just keep pointed to, well, what do I like? What represents my experience? You know, and what fits with this project and the community that we're trying to help. And so it's been a huge part of it, like just like wearing my combat boots with a little bit of a polish for the boardroom, that it keeps everything still fit, aligned with who I am and what I'm trying to do. So that gives me a lot of like confidence and comfort going forward, that like, you know, there's no wrong decision. It's just
No,
right?
that's the beauty of it. There are no wrong decisions. And I remember when you looked at me and you said, "Are you going to let me keep my combat boots?" And you were really nervous about that. And it was such an immediate response. It's like, yes, because you represent boots on the ground. It would be so not part of your image to take that away, because to put you in a dress pair of shoes would mean that you were willing to represent them. But you're not willing to just represent them. You're willing to walk the walk and walk next to them. So you need to be boots on the ground. It was just so part of your image.
Yeah.
And just to give the viewers a little background, I did a podcast with Paul on my darling dad, who was a Korean vet, and I was explaining to him that my dad always wore his boots. He wore them to shovel. I think he resold them 2 or 3 times. He loved them until they finally fell apart. And so I understand that mentality, and it was like so important to keep that in your style.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for someone who doesn't maybe apprehensive about this process, to know that, you know, yeah, it's going to feel like, it may feel a little odd at first, but to know that, you know, your objective is not to, you know, take what they, you know, love and change it and put it in a different package. No, it's like, it's actually the opposite of that, like helping them to take those parts with them into their new image, or even just, and some of it's not new image, it's just a slight, you know, change, a slight tweak and
Refining.
Yeah.
I like to tell people I don't consider people Barbie and Ken dolls. I'm not just dressing you. There are other people that do that. I'm excavating the image. I'm bringing you forward so you're really comfortable in who you're supposed to be. And that just changes your decisions when you get up in the morning and look at your closet. It's really easy to know, well, I'm just putting clothes on that are me. You know, and I don't want to dress people like I dress. I don't want to dress everyone like I dressed you, because that doesn't fit everyone.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Huh. So how can people get a hold of you? How can they find this project?
You can go to our website. That's resiliencemn.org, which is, I don't know, did you know that some people say the word resilience wrong?
How do they say it?
I just got off the phone like yesterday with a customer service person who was like, let me just verify some information here. Are you with the Veteran Resilience Project? I'm like, and it was the second time she said it. I'm like, no, I'm not with the Veteran Resilience Project, ma'am. I'm with the Resilience Project. And she's like, oh, you could hear kind of, I'm like, that's really funny that you said resilience, though. That's not what we do. And we do the opposite of that. We turn silence into resilience. So anyway, the website is Resilience.
I am so horrified, because it is kind of what the government does to the vets. They resilience them when they come back here.
It's what's happening. I don't know, you know how, but it's definitely happening.
And I didn't mean to blame. I'm sorry. Yeah. But yeah, that's what just came up. That yes, they are resilient. Oh.
I mean, you know, it's like people are bad spellers and they mispronounce stuff. It wasn't, you know, intended in a bad way, I don't think, but I was just sort of shocked at like, Resilience Project. I hope that's not how people are reading our name. No, resilience. So you can go to the website, which has all of our podcasts that are published, our blog, and we're also going to have some video feeds from Community Voices. Oh, good. And then you can also go to our Facebook page, which I think if you search Veteran Resilience Project, it comes up. Otherwise, you can also search Resilience MN, as in Minnesota. And then you can find me on Twitter. I'm actually at Mississippi. You can just search my name, Paul Riedner. Or you can search
Mississippi?
Mississippi, yeah. Because I grew up on the Mississippi River.
Okay.
You know, and yeah, for some reason I couldn't use my name, and so I decided to be cute. Don't do that.
Oh, okay. So I should introduce you as the cute Paul Riedner in the beginning instead of the lovely Paul Riedner.
You can try. And if if there are any veterans, listening, or if you're connected to a loved one who's served, please do check in and find out if they're okay, and do not hesitate on connecting with veterans. It's not, we treat it like it's, well, they don't I don't know what to ask, and I don't want.
Do they want to talk? Do they want to share this?
One of the issues is that veterans don't want to talk, but if you don't ask, then they can't choose to talk. They're not going to go be the first one. Often they're not going to be the first one to say, hey, I need to talk to you about something that's bothering me. But if you show that you care and be there and let them know often, then that gives them an opportunity. And there's this us and them thing that I'm discovering with veterans, that we kind of think that civilians aren't going to understand our experience. But if you don't tell the story and don't share your experience, then it'll be true. They can understand, but you have to be open to dialogue, and that's really one of the only ways that a civilian is going to be able to empathize with things that veterans go through. So that's what we're doing with the podcast, telling stories that gives a civilian that connective tissue, something to understand from each perspective. So yeah, I want any audience members out there just to keep that in the back of their mind, that there's, in Minnesota alone, there's at least 7,500 post 9/11 veterans who served in Iraq and or Afghanistan with untreated PTSD right now. That's a lot. It's a lot of people, and they're not raising their hand saying, I need some help. Well, sometimes they do, but most often we try to deal with it on our own.
Well, doesn't the military kind of tell you that you're just supposed to tough it out, and
yeah,
that
that's what we do.
Yeah.
We don't want to be a burden on somebody else. We do things to help others, and but this is one of those cases, where it doesn't help to just do it yourself. It's not going to get better, so I just want to reiterate that EMDR works, and it works on a number of things, from pain to addiction to PTSD, military sexual trauma. It's used on rape victims. It's used on moral injury. It is an amazing healing modality, and we don't have to live with PTSD if we decide to face that, face the beast really, and decide that, yeah, I'm going to go get some help.
I think you touched on something that really fascinated me, and that was moral injury. Mm-hmm. When I listened to your podcast, I had never heard that phrase before. I didn't even know that existed. Did it
make sense just by the name of it?
No, it didn't. And I kept thinking, and then you started explaining it, and it's like, well, that to me is like a bruise on the heart. It's like you're taking somebody and you're making them do something that's so against their moral code, but they have to do it because they're being told to do it, or it's bruised because they did something that they reacted and did. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Explain it. You're going to explain it a little more in depth than I would, but
sure. So the idea is, and this is sort of a new, a developing understanding, and it's always been around, but we're starting to pinpoint it as we understand that there are more parts to ourselves than just, our body or just our mind, right? There's our heart, our soul, our social connections, and then the values that our community, our parents, and those in our community that raise us taught us to uphold as values and principles. And so now when then we get put into a situation in the military where we're asked to go do something that's very, very difficult for humans to do, is to attack another human, right? To try to kill them. And then also be on the receiving end of violence, right? So that tests our moral fiber. And although we are willing to do it to protect those on our sides and those at home, during those moments, there are maybe some sort of internal crisis, but it's survive at the moment. Your brain goes into a sort of state where it's not going to process everything properly. You're in the fight, and so often it's years later when someone comes home and things start to come up, and that those moral questions start to really eat away at who we are. Like, it's a loss of self in a lot of ways. And then it's also a loss of a connection to our community. So we start to isolate ourselves, and we start to feel maybe some shame and despair. And these are damaging emotions, because now not only are we told by our training in the military that we can deal with it ourselves and we're tough enough to just suck it up. But now we're feeling emotions and things that we isolate ourselves even more because of this. And so moral injury can happen because we witnessed something that really affected us, or we did something that affects our sense of self and who changes our sense of who we are, or we were unable to do something to stop an event. The range of things that can cause this moral injury, or soldier's heart is another way it's understood, is really wide. And so you can't understand it without understanding that person's experience and who they are and what situation were they in, and how did that challenge their internal compass. And so when now we have, like I said, 7,500 men and women who are no longer in the war zone, but they brought the war zone back into our communities, and they're back in their bedrooms and their basements and cars. And when the community doesn't take an active role in their well-being, it becomes a real tragic situation, because they're left to deal with it on their own. And because of the nature of moral injury, it's because the community was involved in this, our decision to go send them to war, right? And now that we're back, and if the community is abandoning them, there's a real serious effect upon the soldiers' prospects of recovery at that point. So that's why I actually think suffering from moral injury is a healthy thing. It's adaptive, So when I look at the community and try to make sense of how a community could collectively decide to go to war, and then once the soldiers are back, decide that it's sort of out of their hands, I could say, well, that's really sheds a lot of bad light on the community and the well-being of our community to abandon veterans like that. So the only way that I can understand that without disparaging the community is that the community itself is not well, and that there's some form of collective trauma that we've been through after 9/11, and all the fear-mongering and all of the social engineering, really, to continue to support these wars. And so people are afraid of terrorism, and they're afraid of being viewed as someone who doesn't support troops or support these wars, and so they sort of protect themselves from stepping out and saying, no, this isn't right. And so it ends up being nothing happens, and it's all left on the shoulders of the soldier again.
So are you saying that there's moral injury on both sides? So there's moral injury in society, and there's moral injury on the part of the veterans, and
yeah, it's a collective experience.
That's interesting.
So that's what our crowdfunding was called. I called it Minnesota's Moral Injury, because we have the best hospital in the world. We have Mayo Clinic. We have the best treatment facility in the world, Hazelden. We have an amazing business environment. We have a really healthy philanthropic environment. We have integrative health and all these resources in our community. And our community in general is very healthy. Like, people are active, and they take care of themselves, and they run, and they go to church. They're generous and compassionate. But at the same time, we have Minnesota National Guard with the highest suicide rate in the country.
Yeah, which really floored me.
Right? So how can those things coexist?
Yes, how can they?
Right? How is it possible? It's a severe tarnish on what we like to hold ourselves up as being such a great community. So that's why I present it in that way, because a soldier is not, someone who's struggling when they come back doesn't mean that they're, a mental patient. This can be viewed as a spiritual injury, and
a spiritual disconnect.
It can't be solved by some, I don't know, it can't be solved with a pill, and if the community is not going to be involved in the recovery, then it won't be a full recovery.
Do you think that the community's moral injury came from the fact that we were never really part of the decision to go to war? That the country just went to war, and the people, we the people, have never really had any skin in the game. We've never really had to do anything.
Yeah, we were told to just support it, and
it's like,
go shopping.
It's taken care of. Just support the economy, and it's like, but every other time that the country has gone to war,
I do think there's no shared sacrifice.
No, there isn't.
Even though we all pay our taxes to go do these things, so it does cost us. But we don't have that. A lot of people don't have a personal connection to it. So, and also I think Minnesota doesn't have how do I say this? Like, this community is progressive, independent thinkers. So there's a healthy peace activist groups here. There's people who are, anti-establishment, maybe don't participate in politics. So I know there's a lot of different perspectives as to, like, I was against this thing, right? Or I didn't elect him, right? Or whatever it is that was their sort of justification for, it's not my ideal, you guys signed up for the military, and then I said I didn't want you guys to go to Iraq, but then you did, so, what else can I do, right? But the simple fact is that we all had many times over 10 years plus to say, no, that's enough, right? And we haven't done that. So then there's a consequence for that, like thousands and thousands of our neighbors that are going to have to deal with this for many years.
There's a humanitarian thread that everyone has responsibility for.
Yep.
Because we are our brother's keeper. And that's not a religious thing, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
We are all connected, and we are all our brother's keepers. So there's a humanitarian element that needs to be upheld by everyone.
Yeah.
And so that's why the moral injury really, really interests me, because I don't think everybody understands how bruised we all are.
Yeah, and the other part, I think, is that there's trauma everywhere in our communities, I mean, people often say, well, my friend, went through something, right? Or, what is it, 1 in 5 women experience rape, right?
Something like that.
Or, it's a high number.
Yeah.
How many people, so there's trauma all around us, and, in terms of abusive relationships, there's a lot of different examples of that, right? And then people say, well, it wasn't PTSD in war. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma. So if you have a community that doesn't take care of each other, they're already living in a traumatized state, right?
I love that. Trauma is trauma. And it's like, rather than sectioning it out and saying, oh, only these people have trauma, it's like trauma is trauma. So for somebody, getting yelled at work might be trauma.
Totally.
For another person, going to war is trauma. It's like there's a large spectrum of trauma.
Yeah.
But everyone on the face of the earth has experienced trauma at some point.
Yeah. And the simple fact is that some people deal with it better than others, right? And some people have a more resilient mindset. And it is a mindset. Like, it's turning what is a source of suffering and pain, and then being able to process that so that you can remove what is not legitimately part of that traumatic event and experience, removing those things so they don't trigger you in the future, and then deciding, okay, I don't want to feel like that anymore. I don't need to. Okay, it's done. It's a memory. It's over. Now, how do I want to be in the future so that you can go forward and you actually use that source of pain as a source of growth. And so it's a fact that you can turn post-traumatic stress into post-traumatic growth. So when I look at the community, if I say, okay, guys, like, let's be honest here, we have a lot of trauma to deal with as a community, and it won't get better until we start doing that, right? And I happen to be a vet, and I happen to be in this position where I can help vets, overcome that and come back into the community as a healthy, once again, ready to serve other people, and do good things for their community. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages and benefits for this community to support what we're doing at VRP. Because a veteran who's healthy, who's been given a second chance to get over their trauma, they're going to give back a lot. They're going to have a whole lifetime of giving back.
Because that's how you guys are trained. You're trained to give back and to take care of. And so if we take care of you, it just multiplies.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. And I think the community itself, it's the same message. If you have, if you're tired of living life, in a way that you're not fully yourself, and you have some suffering from their past, like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, this is a proven solution, and we almost call it resilience training instead of trauma therapy, because we don't deal with trauma. We teach resilience, and that applies to anyone. And you don't have to have a PTSD diagnosis. These things are irrelevant. If you are suffering from something in your past that's holding you back from moving forward, then this would work for you.
Oh, I like that. It works for everyone.
There's different sort of preparedness that people have. Maybe there are some behavioral issues that you have to work through before you start, like, an EMDR process. But that's exactly where you need to get anyway. So starting now is really the key, and it's not easy. It's that facing the things in your past that are holding you back, and it'll be tough for a little bit, but it works pretty quickly, from my understanding. I actually started to do a little EMDR or meet with the therapist here in the last few weeks.
How's it going for you?
It's unbelievably, like, liberating, like, to have someone that you can trust, with that professional relationship, that, like, I can say things to my therapist that I've never said to another human being before in my entire life. Right?
Really?
Yeah. And to have that sort of support, to know that you can say anything, or you can say nothing.
So let me ask a question. Had I not been in your closet, and had you not been in this physical space of feeling comfortable with who you are, do you think you would have been able to do that with the therapist? I
don't know. That's a good question, because when I was sitting my first meeting, I was actually I had come from another meeting where I had my, sort of boardroom outfit on, and yeah, I carry a certain confidence with that now that allows me to be vulnerable when I need to be,
That's nice.
Yeah, it's true. I never really put those things together before. That's
nice.
I told my counselor too. I'm like, I don't even know if I should be here, because I don't feel like I have any, like, past issue to work through. I couldn't pinpoint what that thing would be.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need to learn about this because this is my job and I want to be able to talk about it. But I also know that this is what every vet says. Like, well, I don't know what we talk about, right? Or someone else needs it more than I do, or whatever, right?
So every vet comes in with that exact same
Well, no, but I mean,
almost cover story? Like,
some do though, right? Where it's hard to own up and say, yeah, I have some things I need to work on.
we all do.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's much easier to say, well, I don't know, I'm not quite ready for that. I'm not going to call this guy back. Or when I'm sitting down in the chair, I'm going to say almost the truth, like almost get to the part that needs to be said, right?
Hence your chisel. You're
Right.
chiseling to get closer and closer to the truth so you can stand in it and own it. That was quite a gift he gave you.
I think so too.
He did. You know, I think we've got so much more to talk about that we're going to have Paul back to be a guest again, because we've got a lot to go on and we've got some things that we're going to be working on, and so we'll keep you all posted. Please make sure that you subscribe to Tiger's Face, our YouTube channel, and like the Tiger's Face Facebook page, and please like Image by Liz. We will see you next Friday live with it. Oh, and Twitter. I'm sorry, Twitter.
One tiger's face.
One Tiger's Face.
The number.
Oh, One Tiger's Face is our Twitter page, or Twitter handle.
Handle.
I'm just learning all this. And so if you would like all those and follow us and join us, it'd be great. Until then, remember, you are the only you we have. So we'll see you next Friday. Thanks. Bye.